The movie opens in the year 1986, Scotland. American siblings Angela and Jackson Sayers are professional con artists who take advantage of those who think their homes are haunted. While none of them have any experience in the subject, the pair identify themselves as paranormal investigators while working with Beth and Elliot. One day, a small family that recently lost their mother makes a reservation with the team. Jackson promises the daughter, Susie, that they will speak to the mother and take her to paradise. Working on the technical side of their plan is Beth and Elliot. In order to prepare for speaking with the spirits, Angela starts the interview. The husband's father informs her that his wife goes by the name Maddie. Angela writes all the information down, while the others begin to act like they are detecting spirits around the room. Frank inquires about Angela's mother, who recently passed away as well. She suddenly feels depressed as a result of this. This family's mother worked as a tailor. She spent the most of her time making clothing in the basement. Angela and Elliot, the cameraman, walk to the basement and yell Maddie's name. Mannequins that have dust on them are scattered throughout the pitch-black chamber. Beth tells Elliot to play a recorded voice as Angela tries to communicate with the spirit. Frank is excited by this because he thinks he might be able to speak with his deceased wife. Once Angela announces that Maddie has left the house and is at peace, the session abruptly comes to an end. Angela takes one final glance at the pitch-black cellar before heading upstairs to depart. She spots 3 mannequins near the window, so she glances at them closely. The center mannequin suddenly takes the appearance of Maddie and tries to strike Angela. When she wakes up, her nose is still bleeding. She is now terrified and perplexed, but Elliot supports her. They celebrate their productive session that evening in a club. Beth displays to them a pamphlet-sized advertising for their medium service. The trio advertises Angela's abilities as a medium, using the legacy of the siblings' late mother. Elliot and Angela leave because they are not persuaded by the idea. Due to his obligation to loan sharks, Jackson organizes the sessions. Elliot inquires after Angela regarding the basement. She believes the team is making fun of her over Maddie and the mannequin, but Elliot corrects her by saying he has no idea what she is talking about. As Angela gets home, she started looking through her mother's photos. She notices a letter from the Laurel Creek Mental Health Center. The next day, she receives a call from a possible customer asking for assistance as she continues to browse some of her mother's possessions before going to sleep. Angela informs the woman on the phone that they are now unavailable, since she can sense that she is in a hurry. She hangs up the phone, but the caller is adamant on getting through. Angela has neglected her academics in the meanwhile. After some quick counseling, the college dean summons Angela. Because Angela has recently been unable to turn in homework and attend courses, she is worried about her. According to Angela, she has not been feeling well for a few days. A newspaper story headlined "American Ghost Hunter Rescued My Family Home" is produced by the dean. She now knows why Angela has been skipping courses, but Angela excuses herself by stating that she does it to get additional money. When the dean is lecturing her on the value of concentration in the classroom, Angela hears a distant voice calling her name. She casts a quick peek towards the closed door and sees the knob turn. The door eventually unlocks, allowing a figure inside, who has what appear to be bloodied hands. Angela is uncertain. The dean tells her that her nose is bleeding. Angela leaves the building to see her very close family member, her grandfather. She goes to see him frequently. When she is there, they discuss Angela's mother, but her grandfather avoids bringing up his daughter and dismisses the subject. He ultimately gets up and rants about how her mother talked about hearing voices and seeing paranormal things if Angela doesn't change the subject. Angela is taken aback by this and bursts into tears because she fears becoming like her mom. Later that day, Angela learns from researching the home's past that the owner's foster children were all discovered lifeless. The Sayers get another call, asking about their services. Jackson greets Angela as she enters the house, his face covered in bruises and scars after being beaten by a man he owes money to. He inquires as to why she turned down an elderly client. She claims that the house is haunted, but after bringing up their mother, her brother becomes irritated. They both still feel strongly about this subject. Their mother saw individuals who weren't there, and ultimately took as a result. Angela exits and cries aloud in her room. Since she is worried about the guys who could harm them if Jackson doesn't return the money he borrowed, Beth gathers her belongings and those of Jackson. One evening, Angela hears noises outside her door and wakes up in the middle of the night. When she descends the stairs, she discovers her mother in the kitchen, blinded. As soon as she discovers it is all a nightmare, she tells her brother about their latest customer. Despite opposition from his sister, Jackson accepts the job and travels to the rural area where the property is located, since he needs the money to pay off the loan sharks. Angela is troubled the entire trip and can't quit thinking about her dream. When they reach a gated subdivision, an elderly keeper opens the gate for them. They all feel uneasy as they look at the residence's exteriors. When she gives the crew a tour of the house, Mrs. Green, the caller, welcomes them. Mrs. Green is a woman of great tradition. She places a great priority on common courtesy and decent manners. Jackson offers Mrs. Green the payslip, but she says she won't sign it until the job is done. Angela starts the conversation by addressing Mrs. Green's worries. She claims that at first she heard yelling, laughing, and laughter, but with time, they change to harsh taunts. Herman, her son, did the deed 15 years ago, she says. Mrs. Green holds herself responsible for the murders of the young girls, for failing to pay close attention to her son in his formative years. She sobs, but the team comforts her by emphasizing that it was not her fault, and promising to assist her in returning to her home. When Angela requests pictures of the girls, Mrs. Green is eager to provide. She introduces the girls to her, using old pictures. Herman, who appears to be a kind youngster in the images, is depicted in one of her possessions. Jackson circles the home, looking in all the hidden places. The furniture is largely antique, and the room is mostly dark. He encounters the caregiver and is startled. Jackson creates a scheme to defraud Mrs. Green, with the help of his team of technicians, to give their clients the impression that they possess supernatural skills. Their regular performers play pre-recorded noises that resemble ghosts. The three of them are making plans, and Angela is really concerned. She is startled to find a little girl roaming around the home, after hearing her humming beside the stairway. Her nose bleeds again, so she heads to the bathroom to clean up. While looking at the mirror, a dark shadow passes behind her, but she sees nothing. Elliot checks up on her. When she investigates the sounds coming from the cubicles, she slowly unlocks each door. Although Elliot asks whether everything is okay, she is only paying attention to her senses. After examining the final cubicle, a giggling girl suddenly walks by. She and Elliot hide inside one cubicle, but instead of seeing Elliot, she sees a small child with her mouth stitched shut, and she faints, except for her brother. The rest of the crew is concerned about Angela's well-being when she regains consciousness. He expresses no guilt for driving Angela into the con, yet he still tells her he loves her. Ms. Green wants to know how the services operate in detail. Jackson begins to explain, but she cuts him off by implying that she has doubts about the team. While getting dressed, Elliot inquires about the earlier event, and Angela reconsiders telling him, since he might not believe it. Elliot ultimately admits his feelings for Angela, and they both smile before beginning to film. They communicate with Beth and Jackson through the radio. Elliot follows Angela about the home, while Mrs. Green watches from behind a screen in a dark room. Angela screams out the girl's name to start a conversation, but no spirits react. They enter a bedroom and discover a record player playing weird music. Angela notices a doll in one of the corners and touches it. She detects something outside the room, and both of them head out to investigate. A girl stands in one of the corridors, staring at Angela blankly. Angela brings out a photograph of a girl and confirms her identification. She becomes concerned, since Elliot does not notice anything. She follows them into the restricted East Wing. In the control room, Mrs. Green is concerned about what they might find there. Angela is drawn into the restricted area by a spirit, and Elliot, who is filming everything, follows. The floor crumbles as they move near a chamber, leading Elliot to tumble. Jackson arrives to the East Wing to assist him. He believes that this act is part of their gimmick, but he is mistaken. Jackson maintains that they must continue, despite Elliot's injuries, in order to complete the job. To get to Elliot, they utilize a ladder. While down there, Jackson pulls up a scary doll. While looking around, they see weird writings painted on the wall. This is the chamber where the small girls were imprisoned and eventually murdered. To see more clearly, the siblings peel the remaining wallpaper and they discover disturbing messages. Mrs. Green notes that they were able to view the words on the wall as the camera moves in their way. Angela admits to her elder brother that she has been seeing strange activity since their previous job. He rejects her, claiming that the messages are only doodling. Angela responds, claiming that the incidents are not coincidental. They assist Elliot, who has a sprained ankle. Angela takes one more glance around the cellar before heading upstairs. She tells her brother that she has done scamming people, but he disagrees with the idea. They end up having a heated argument. Jackson notices Mrs. Green sitting still in her room. He attempts to speak with her, but she informs Jackson that they have failed and that she thinks they are con artists. She sobs that Herman is not to blame and that the girls deserved what happened to them. Jackson exits the room, concluding that she was also involved in the incident. Jackson quickly calls the team via radio, sensing that something is wrong with their client. It's dark in the home, and Jackson is having trouble finding Beth, who is in the control room. He gets to the control room area and finds everything in chaos. He turns around and sees a spirit immediately in front of him. He is completely taken aback and takes a step back in fear. But then he hears noises on the radio asking for backup. They are having difficulty dragging Elliot. Angela discovers Beth has gone missing, and they search for her as well, but she is nowhere to be found. They notice her jewelry on the floor, splattered with blood. A little girl arrives out of nowhere in the lift, frightening the siblings. As Angela notices her brother has a nosebleed, she knows he has the same powers as her. They got their sixth sense from their late mother. Beth's radio makes an attempt to communicate, but Jackson is unable to hear anything. Immediately, he enters the elevator in search of Beth, assuming that the girls are attempting to assist them. Lights flicker, and laughing can be heard inside the lift. He catches a sight of his mother, but the emotion overpowers him. He follows the radio signal along an empty hallway. He enters the attic door and discovers Beth unconscious, her lips stitched shut. Her face is drenched with blood while Jackson tries to comfort her from the screen. Angela sees a figure walking toward the basement. She wakes Elliot up so they can escape before anything worse happens. She takes Elliot carefully in the car. She notices a teddy bear on the lawn that she believes belonged to one of the girls who perished in the basement. They are clueless and terrified as they wait in the car for Jackson and Beth. Jackson and Beth arrive at their destination. Angela inquires as to what happened to Beth, but Jackson remains silent. He is puzzled as he drives them away. He begins to hear chuckling noises and notices a girl standing in the center of the road. He refuses to believe that it is all in his head, so he runs her over the girl on the road. In truth, the housekeeper was the one who was run over, causing the elderly guy to perish on the scene. Jackson causes the car to smash into a tree, and Beth is thrown out of the car as a result of the collision. Jackson approaches her lifeless corpse and gives her one more hug. Herman arrives from behind him and strikes him with a shovel, knocking him unconscious. Angela is still unconscious as a result of the accident, but Elliot is awake. Herman walks up to the car. He pulls Elliot out and smacks him with a shovel. Angela finally gains consciousness. She steps outside the van to inspect Beth's body. She is overcome with fear and confusion. She attempts to wake Elliot up, but when questioned about Jackson, he struggles to answer. Angela has no option but to return to the house to save her brother. Jackson is strapped to a chair and has blood on his face. Mrs. Green and Herman enter the room, intent on doing something evil to the young man. A little girl greets Angela as she approaches the door. Mrs. Green chops out Jackson's tongue, smashes his teeth, and sews his mouth shut while tormenting him. Meanwhile, Elliot regains strength and attempts to crawl back to the home to assist his friends. Angela enters a room filled with toys in the hopes of finding her brother, but Herman grabs her. She awakens to see her elder brother standing near her. She apologizes to Jackson for not being able to save him in time, feeling completely powerless. Ms. Green then directs Herman to bring Jackson to the shed. Angela urges her to let him go, since he is all she has left. Elliot manages to stab Herman with a knife. He arrives to untie and assist Angela, just as Mrs. Green begins her assault on her. Mrs. Green hugs her son as he loses his life. To exact her vengeance, she recklessly stabs Elliot with a butcher knife. The spirits of the girls appear, and Angela, who is still tied, pleads and begs them to help. The spirits start screaming. This distracts Mrs. Green long enough for Angela to untie herself, and she picks up a knife to end her. The little girls vanish into thin air. Angela gets out of the house and notices Jackson's spirit looking for Beth. Angela realizes that she has lost all of her family and falls to the ground. A car that was passing by stops and comes to her aid. Angela and Elliot wake up in the hospital. They hold each other's hands, comforting each other about such a traumatic event. Angela calls her grandfather and confidently tells him that his daughter, their mother, was not insane. Suddenly, a dark shadow approaches her, and she looks up, showing it's someone she knows.